Bigfoot in Vietnam, aliens in Korea, and a zombie attack in Russia. Here are 10 of the wildest monsters seen during wartime. Number 10. The Bigfoot of Vietnam. During the Vietnam War, soldiers saw a lot of terrifying things, some of them proven to be real, and some of them living at the edge of legend and fact. One of those bizarre nightmare monsters is a mysterious Bigfoot-like monster that lived in the jungle. It's known as Batatut, a creepy beast that skulks the forests of Vietnam and Laos and is rarely seen by humans. The Batatut stands about 6 feet, 2 meters tall. It's hairy and looks like an ape, and it's apparently highly aggressive. The first sightings of the Batatut came from the early 1900s. But then during the Vietnam War, because there was so much guerrilla warfare going on in the jungle, soldiers continuously found themselves bumping into what they thought was the Batatut. The most legendary encounter came in the early days of the war. A group of men from the 101st Airborne Division were taking a break in a mountainous region of the jungle when they felt something stalking them. At first, they believed it to be an ambush of the North Vietnamese soldiers. Instead, they witnessed a monster with red hair, dark eyes, and a gaping mouth. It looked at the soldiers, who thought it could have been an orangutan, and then vanished back into the jungle, making a ruckus as it went. The soldiers were shocked, not knowing if they'd witnessed a rare jungle primate or the legendary Batatut. It seems likely that it was just a bizarre gorilla-like creature, but perhaps there was some truth to the legend of the Batatut. We may never know for sure. Number 9. The Giant of Kandahar. As far as anyone knows, the Giant of Kandahar is classified by the US government. At least its existence is classified, along with a deadly encounter that the giant had with a group of United States soldiers operating in Afghanistan. This is what allegedly happened. In 2002, a squadron of soldiers went missing deep in the desert. A special ops task force was sent to find them. The task force eventually located a large cave in the middle of nowhere, with military equipment scattered about inside. As the team entered the cave, they were confronted by a humanoid giant 15 feet, 5 meters tall. It impaled one of the soldiers on a giant spear and then turned on the rest of the squadron. Luckily, these were special ops soldiers and weren't scared of a big burly monster. They eventually took the thing down, though it took them concentrating their M4 machine guns on it for nearly 30 seconds. That's a whole lot of firepower. With the giant dead, the soldiers airlifted it back to the base using a helicopter. Nobody knew where the giant came from or how it had been living alone inside a cave in the middle of nowhere. To this day, there's no official record of the giant or the incident. You can try to find out information about the beast, but the records are incomplete and spotty. It may just be another one of those stories that we'll find out about when the government decides to declassify the information they do have. Number 8. The Atomic Flatwoods Monster. In 1952, an atomic monster descended on Flatwoods, West Virginia. It was seen once and only once by a group of eyewitnesses. According to History.com, it all happened when a pair of brothers were playing outside and witnessed a red light fall from the sky and crash onto a nearby farm. The youngsters, along with their mother, rushed to see what the light was. So did a few other people from the area. In total, 7 residents witnessed a monster that looked like Frankenstein's creation appear out of the trees. It had a green face, its body was blood red, and it was glowing as if nuclear. It was such a frightening story that it picked up traction all across the country. Sure, most of the witnesses were kids, but there were adults there too, making it a credible story. People in the town were terrified because it was 1952 and the Cold War was in full swing. With the advancement of nuclear bombs, people were terrified that what was witnessed in Flatwoods was an atomic monster. However, the thing was never seen again, and to this day, no explanation has ever been given for what the creature may have been. Number 7. Chased by ghosts. In the 1970s, US Army soldiers destroyed a series of tunnels in Germany to try and get rid of a ghost. That's right, there was a ghost allegedly haunting the people who lived by their base in the small town of Freihung, where there's been a major army installation since 1945. In the center of the town, there used to be an old castle where a noblewoman died many years ago. The castle was demolished and a hotel was built in its place. It was the hotel which the ghost haunted, and specifically the tunnels beneath the hotel. Locals call her the White Lady. In the 70s, this ghost wandered the streets at night, scaring drivers in their cars, and she was seen frequently meandering through the tunnels underneath a local hotel. In an attempt to rid themselves of the ghost, the town turned to the American troops and asked them to demolish the tunnels, which they did. However, the ghost refused to leave. Even after the tunnels were destroyed, the White Lady was still witnessed floating through the hotel at night and sometimes appearing in the dark streets outside. Perhaps if you visit today, you can still see her if you're very lucky. Number 6. Japanese soldiers and the mermaid. During World War II, Japanese soldiers were occupying the K Islands in Indonesia. This was back in 1943, and these islands were fairly remote, which made for the perfect conditions for spotting something extraordinary. The islands are pretty small, covering an area of only about 500 square miles. Today, these islands are famous for their beautiful beaches. However, in 1943, they were the location of one of the most bizarre mermaid sightings in history. The Japanese soldiers were part of a surveillance team on a remote island. They began witnessing strange creatures in the water near their base. The monsters were unlike anything the soldiers had ever seen before. They had limbs like ordinary people, except their faces were twisted and ugly. They had fish mouths filled with sharp needle-like teeth. They also had skin that was pink like salmon, with spines protruding from their necks and shoulders and heads. Of course, these didn't look like traditional mermaids. They were more like disgusting frog people. The Japanese continued to see them playing in the lagoon, swimming at the beach, and hanging around near the water. Despite their efforts, they were never able to catch one. When they asked the local islanders what the creatures were, they called them orangutan, which translates roughly to human fish. Perhaps these creatures simply died out, or perhaps they never existed. Investigators will have to continue to hunt down any evidence of their existence until they find something concrete. Number 5. UFO sickness. In 1951, a regiment of soldiers fighting in the Korean War were stationed near the city of Chorwon, about 60 miles from the capital of Seoul. They were preparing to bomb a village with artillery when out of nowhere they witnessed strange lights coming from far up in the hills. It looked like the lights were drifting across the mountain. What happened next would become a mystery for the ages. The lights were only witnessed for a handful of minutes. The lights pulsed and glowed as they drifted over the hills. The soldiers fired their weapons at the floating lights, but nothing happened. Then, they were attacked by ray beams, like searchlights sweeping over the entire platoon. Afterward, the lights were gone and the men had no idea what happened. However, 3 days later, the entire company of soldiers needed to be evacuated to a hospital for medical treatment because they were sick as dogs. They had the symptoms of radiation sickness and were horribly ill. The soldiers did eventually recover, but it was a long and tough road. It was as if they'd been blasted with a high-energy radiation beam. Many believe it was a freak UFO sighting and that the alien ships radiated them. This also happens to be one of the biggest UFO sightings in history because there were at least 42 men who witnessed the event, each with the exact same story. What do you think? 42 people with the same story and the same illness? It's too straightforward to be a total hoax. We may never know unless the government declassifies something incredible or the aliens return. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to American Eye if you haven't already. More videos just like this are coming out very soon. Number 4. The Hounds of World War I. During the Battle of Mons in World War I, with the British troops facing off against German soldiers in August of 1914, something strange happened. The British soldiers sustained heavy casualties because of the fighting, but they managed to push the Germans back. But the Germans weren't the only thing the British Army had to fear. When a group of men went to patrol no man's land, the vast and barren area between the two sides of the fighting, they vanished. When their bodies were recovered several days later, teeth marks were discovered on their throats as if they'd been ripped apart by a massive wolf. Then during the night, the soldiers began hearing howling coming from the darkness. From then on, almost every soldier that went into no man's land at night vanished and were found with their throats ripped out. Some soldiers witnessed a huge gray beast like a werewolf wandering not far from the trenches, though nobody actually saw the creature, and eventually it kinda just disappeared. Nobody exactly knows what the Hound of Mons was. It could have been an extremely hungry wolf, a vicious wolf pack, or according to Canadian veteran F.J. Newhouse, a hound from hell created by the German scientist Dr. Gottlieb Hochmüller after switching a wolf's brain with the mind of a madman and setting it loose on British soldiers. Do you think that's even possible? I don't, but then again, who knows for sure. Number 3. Giant Sea Monster. In 1973, US soldiers in Laos killed and captured a very real monster. It wasn't a mythical mermaid or a hound from hell, it was a mythical serpent known to the locals as the Queen of the Naga. The slippery beast was pulled out of the Mekong River and measured at over 24 feet, 7 meters long. It took over 24 men to hold the fish up, angering the locals because they killed their sacred river monster. However, this story seems more likely to be a bit of a fabrication. It's based on the photograph of a group of servicemen who discovered an oarfish stranded on the beach in 1996 near their base in San Diego. The picture is real, the oarfish is real, and it really is a giant mythical sea serpent. But the picture of the soldiers holding it up has been miscaptioned all over the internet. Still, the oarfish is nothing short of legendary. In many Asian countries, they believe an oarfish being found on the shore is an omen of something terrible and destructive to come. Number 2. Yeti footprints. Members of the army in India recently claimed that they found footprints of the Yeti monster. In a rather unusual move, the army tweeted to roughly 6 million followers that it had identified the very real footprints of the mythical Yeti monster. The post was accompanied with pictures of the prints found near the Makalu base camp high up in the Himalayas. As you can probably imagine, the public ridiculed the army mercilessly. The Yeti is an abominable snowman said to live in the Himalayas and Siberia, though there hasn't been much more concrete evidence of its existence. Actually, nothing scientific proves its existence at all. Online, people mocked the army, asking them if maybe it was one of the giants from Game of Thrones instead of the Yeti, obviously ridiculing them. Nobody knows what the prints were or if they were even animal prints at all. They could have just been indents in the snow. But without further evidence, the social media post was pure speculation. Number 1. Zombie attack. There appears to be a clip floating around on the internet nowadays that shows what is unmistakably a zombie attacking a soldier. The footage was taken using a night vision camera from a police helicopter, which apparently witnessed a man being chased and then ripped apart. The helicopter was monitoring a soldier who was running for his life from a group of rabid zombies. Once the zombies caught up to him, they shoved him to the ground and ripped him limb from limb. Do we know if it's real? No, we don't. It could be a well-edited fraud, or it could be something that should have everyone on the planet fearing for their lives. It's unclear when exactly this footage was taken or if it's legitimate, but the implication that Russia had a close call with a zombie plague is quite frankly terrifying. Which of these monsters is the most frightening to you? Let me know in the comments down below, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe for all the wildest videos right here on American Eye.